Welcome back to Geek Force. Today, we're covering all Stranger Things comics. The Other Side, Six, Into the Fire, Science Camp, Dungeons & Dragons, The Tomb of YBWEN, KAMCHATKA, The Voyage, and The Rise of Hellfire. If you enjoy such breakdowns, hit that like button and subscribe for more comic deep dives. Let's get started.
Stranger Things, The Other Side. So, the story kicks off right where the show begins. Will's pedaling home from Mike's place after a D&D session when something terrifying starts hunting him. He makes it to his shed, grabs his dad's old hunting rifle, and just as he's fumbling to load it, the light explodes with this blinding flash. When his vision clears, everything's changed. His whole world is now covered in slime, spores, and these creepy organic vines. The monster, the Demogorgon, is right outside, snarling and ready to tear him apart. Will's panicking, remembering that D&D moment when his friends were arguing about whether he should attack or defend. But there's no time to think now. He just reacts, pulls the trigger, and boom, the creature vanishes. Did he kill it? Did it run? He has no clue, but at least he's alive. For now. Will stumbles back into what looks like his house, calling for his mom and Jonathan. Nothing. No power, no people, just that horrible, rotting smell everywhere. He collapses in his room, exhausted, and dreams about his friends. Specifically that time Mike had to remind Lucas and Dustin that they're stronger as a team. That lesson's about to become real important. When Will wakes up, reality hits hard. This isn't his world. Something's infecting everything here, making it harder to breathe. He starts coughing and realizes he needs to find help or he's done for. He remembers seeing someone near Mirkwood earlier, so he heads out. That's when he spots this mysterious light and hears a voice calling his name. It's 11, though Will doesn't know her yet. She looks almost ghostly, not fully there, and reminds him of those helpful NPCs in D&D campaigns. But before he can reach her, she disappears. Will screams that he's right here, but she can't hear him. Heartbroken, he heads back home. Now here's where things get interesting. Will finds his supercomm, the walkie-talkie he used with his friends, and tries calling for help. And guess what? His mom's voice comes through. But just as they're connecting, the Demogorgon bursts into his room. Will's hiding behind his bed, desperately covering the supercomm to muffle his mom's frantic yelling. She heard him, but doesn't know if it's really her son or someone messing with her. Will decides he's done hiding. He grabs the rifle and fires at the charging monster, sending flesh and blood flying. The Demogorgon vanishes again, but now Will's out of ammo and the supercomm's dead. He climbs onto the roof, trying to get better range, then tries the house phone. For a few seconds, he hears Joyce's voice before an electrical surge destroys it. As he's running back to his room, his mixtape starts playing, Should I Stay or Should I Go by The Clash. The sound's muffled, like it's coming from another room. Maybe someone's playing it in his real bedroom? Then he hears the Demogorgon again. With no bullets left, Will crawls under his bed and waits. The creature never finds him, so he decides to head into town, hoping to get a supercomm in range with someone else's. That's when he hears screaming, someone calling for Nancy. Will remembers what Mike once told them during a campaign, if you don't help people, who will? So he sprints toward the voice, but by the time he reaches the Harrington pool, the screaming stopped. All he finds is Barbara's broken glasses in the empty pool. Back at his house, devastated and exhausted, Will hears his mom again. The Christmas lights start blinking. They're his new way to communicate. Joyce asks if he's alive, if he's safe, where he is. Will answers the first two easily, but the third? How can he explain where he is? And should he even lead his mom to this nightmare place? Joyce pants the alphabet on the wall, and when Will touches letters in the upside down, the corresponding lights flicker on the other side. He spells out, right here, because technically he is in his house, just in another dimension. But Joyce is confused. If he's right here, why can't she see him? Before Will can figure out another way to explain, the Demogorgon shows up again, and this time it's opening a portal to hunt his mother. Will can't let that happen. He grabs a book, chucks it at the monster, and yells, "Come and get me, buttface!" Then he runs, praying the creature follows him instead. Will ends up hiding in Hawkins Cemetery. A few hours earlier, he'd gone to Mike's basement hoping to contact his friend, but instead heard the news report declaring him dead. The authorities found a body, his body, on the other side. Will's devastated. He races home and uses the lights to tell Joyce he's not dead, but gets no response. He tries the supercom, the tape recorder, nothing but his mixtape faintly playing. Eventually, he falls asleep dreaming about why adventuring parties need to stick together. When he wakes, his mixtape is playing louder, and it's coming from a half-open portal in his house. He punches and claws at it, screaming for his mom. This time, she hears him. He sees her faint outline and tells her he's alive, but the Demogorgon's coming. He warns his mom he's being hunted, and when she asks where he is, he tries describing the Upside Down. Joyce tells him to stay strong, promises she'll find him, but right now he needs to run and hide. The Demogorgon seems torn between entering the portal and chasing Will, which gives him enough time to escape. He successfully hides for a day, moving constantly, until he ends up back at the cemetery. That's when he hears someone praying nearby. Following the voice home, he discovers his dad fixing the wall, which is also sealing up the portal. Will screams at him to stop, but his dad can't hear him. His only connection to his world is gone. Will finally breaks down, grabs a chair, and smashes it against the sealed portal in pure frustration. Hours later, he's wandering Mirkwood when he finds a man, Henry, bloodied and dying after being attacked by the Demogorgon during a hunting trip. Henry begs Will to help him find Dale instead of wasting time on him. Will's never seen someone die before, but he knows what Henry needs to hear. He promises they'll find Dale and all make it home together. It's a lie, but it gives Henry peace in his final moments. After Henry dies, Will panics and runs. That's when he hears Jonathan's voice calling for Nancy. Will spots Nancy hiding from the Demogorgon near an open portal. Nancy's inches from the monster, and Will knows she won't make it if he doesn't help. So he grabs a rock, throws it to distract the creature, giving Nancy time to bolt through the portal. He throws another rock, and once she's safe, he runs for the portal himself. But as every step, it's shrinking. By the time he reaches the tree, the portal is gone. He almost escaped. Almost. Days of running have taken their toll. Will's breathing is heavier, the air harder to pull into his lungs. After saving Nancy, he stumbles through the woods, completely dazed. At one point, he walks right past the Demogorgon, feeding on Henry's body, too out of it to even notice it. His mind starts creating illusions to keep him going. He imagines he's Will the Wise heading to Castle Byers. He makes it to his fort and passes out. 11 wakes him up, telling him his mother is coming to rescue him, but Will's too weak to hope. His body's given up, his mind's barely hanging on. All he can do is beg her to tell Joyce to hurry. Then he passes out again. When he wakes, he's still weak, so he starts singing "Should I Stay or Should I Go" for strength. But his voice attracts the Demogorgon. Before he can react, the monster bursts through the fort and finally captures him.
In his dreams, Will remembers being at the library with Mike, who was reading Stephen King for D&D inspiration. They talked about their moms, and Will realized his mom does love him. Her being busy doesn't make her a bad parent. When he wakes up, he's in the upside-down version of the library, surrounded by decomposing bodies, the Demogorgon's victims. He has vines in his mouth connecting him to the hive mind, and the dead bodies taunt him, saying this is where he belongs. Above, he sees the massive creature in the sky, what they'll later call the Mind Flare. Then 2 people in hazmat suits arrive. One is Joyce. She quickly removes the vine from his mouth and saves him. Next thing we know, Will is in a hospital with his mom and Jonathan. They're thrilled he's alive. But when Will wakes up and asks where he is, he still hallucinates being in the Upside Down. His mom and brother look like decomposing corpses. The vision fades when he touches Jonathan's hand. Then Mike, Dustin, and Lucas burst in to check on him. Mike mentions their new friend who helped stop the Demogorgon, 11, but says she's gone now too. And Will can't help but wonder, is it really over? Can anyone face the Demogorgon and come out okay? And that's Will Byers' terrifying journey through the Upside Down.
Stranger Things 6. Our story begins in 1970 with a little girl named Francine riding with her mom down a lonely road. Her mom's freaking out because they're late, and Francine's dad doesn't handle delayed dinners well. Suddenly, Francine screams for her mom to stop the car. Her mom slams the brakes, furious because there's nothing on the road. She's about to slap Francine when a massive tree crashes down right in front of them. Francine just looks at her mom with this expression of pure distrust and says, "I told you, Mom, I told you." Fast forward to 1978 at Hawkins Laboratory. Francine is now known as 6, and she's part of Dr. Brenner's program. She's got precognition, she can predict the future, but her accuracy is terrible. She's trying to predict rock, paper, scissors between twins on the other side of the glass, and Brenner's disappointed. Her success rate is below 15%. He starts gaslighting her, telling her she's special and should be doing better. This reminds 6 of her father, who used to force her to predict lottery numbers. Every time she got it wrong, he'd storm into her room and tear into her. Just like Brenner, her dad would manipulate her by saying he and her mom deserved better because they raised her. After the failed test, orderlies escort 6 back to her room. She walks past other kids playing and asks why they get to relax while she can't. The orderlies tell her to stop asking questions or she'll upset Brenner. As she's heading back, she spots someone she never expected to see, Ricky, her old neighbor from when they moved into a better house after her dad finally won the lotto in 1976. Back then, Ricky had helped her move boxes and seemed like a sweet guy. But now, 6 notices the number on his wrist. He's 3. He's been part of the program this whole time, which means their entire friendship was planned. Ricky tries to act like everything's fine, says he missed her, but 6 is furious. She cuts him off cold, tells him to call her 6 and not use her real name in this facility. She storms into her room, slams the door, and breaks down crying. Then she punches the bookshelf in anger, and that's when she has a vision. The mark from her punch grows into an interdimensional tear, and a hand reaches through and grabs for her. She snaps back to reality, panicking, but she's learned to cover up her visions. There's a camera in her room, so she pretends she just killed a spider on the bookshelf. Brenner buys it. Later at dinner, 6 is sitting with the twins, Jamie and Marcy, when Ricky joins them. 6 confronts him in front of everyone. Ricky had been part of the program when they first met, which means their whole relationship was a setup. But Ricky defends himself, saying he was protecting her. He claims the lab is the safest place for people like them. This triggers 6's memories of her abusive home. In 1977, even after winning the lotto once, her greedy parents wanted her to predict winning horses. They were so disconnected from reality that they thought picking horse names would be easier than lottery numbers. Francine would escape to Ricky's house when things got bad. His parents were understanding and let her stay for dinner. That was precious to her back then. But now she's questioning everything. She asks Ricky if this lab really is the safest place, but he just tries to patronize her. 6 tells him she's fine, even though she's haunted by that vision of the interdimensional tear. 6 wakes up from a nightmare about the Upside Down, though she doesn't know that's what it's called yet. She decides to read in the library, and Ricky approaches her again. With the twins gone, maybe they can talk openly. 6 agrees, but makes sure to call him 3, keeping that distance between them. Ricky reveals his power. He can influence people, make them trust him more easily. 6 is livid. Even if he swears he never used his powers on her, how can she be sure? She remembers him asking her to prom, the good times they had. But then she lashes out. Even if she believes he never used his powers on her, he still lied about everything. His family, himself, his connection to the lab. Ricky asks if she would have believed him if he'd told the truth about being in a secret government program. 6 says she would have if he'd tried. She throws her book at him and storms out. On her way back, she stops to talk with the twins. She tries to subtly ask them about the outside world, but they're too young to remember much. Just a toy store, a dollhouse they wanted but couldn't have, and the toys they got instead. Dr. Brenner interrupts, taking 6 away while ordering the twins to prep for their next experiment. He scolds 6 for talking to the twins about the outside world. When she argues that they're just kids and should be allowed to be kids, Brenner coldly tells her she doesn't know their past. This triggers another memory. It was prom night, and Francine's father was having a meltdown. He screamed at her for thinking she was too good for them, insisted she needed to win more lotteries to repay them for raising her. He criticized her prom dress and the fact that she wasn't eating dinner at home anymore. Francine finally stood up for herself, mocking him for noticing anything beyond his bottle of alcohol. That's when he lost it completely. He raised his fist to hit her while calling her a freak. Francine realized this wasn't her home anymore. She grabbed Ricky and they ran away into the night. In the present, Brenner tells Six about the twins. They had an abusive household too. Their house and family burned down one night, and Jamie and Marcy were the only survivors. They were brought to the lab at a very young age. Brenner then shows Six something incredible. 11 practicing her telekinetic abilities on houses made from playing cards. 11 watches in amazement as she brings down the entire structure with her mind. Brenner reveals that 11 also has a tragic past and tells Six there are other facilities with programs like this around the world. He says there's a war coming and he'll do anything to win it. Six remembers being at the diner with Ricky on prom night. That's when she told him about her abilities, and Ricky implied he might know people who could help her control her powers. In the present, Six asks, "There are bad things coming, aren't there?" Brenner immediately asks if she's had a vision. Six quickly corrects herself, saying it's just a feeling she's had, something cold and terrifying around the corner. Brenner thinks for a moment and then shows her the new wing they've been developing. It's designed to help Six and the others amplify their powers. It'll be ready in a few weeks, and when it is, Brenner plans to change the world with it. So the time finally comes. The new wing is finished, and Six is about to step into the sensory deprivation tank. But now that she's here, she's having second thoughts. Brenner reassures her they'll be monitoring everything, and Six eventually gives in. Once in the tank, she gets flashes of images, waffles, Christmas lights, an ECG display, an enraged Brenner, the lab in the upside down, a kiss, a doorway of light, floodlights, the twins, microorganisms, and blood. Six panics and they pull her out. Brenner's excited to hear what she saw, but Six only tells him she had a vision about waffles. Maybe it's what they'll eat for breakfast, or maybe she's just hungry. For the first time, Brenner completely loses it. His enraged face reminds Six of when her father tried to force his way into Ricky's house after she ran away. Ricky's mother had calmly turned him away, then used that moment to tell Francine about Dr. Brenner, someone who could supposedly help her now that she didn't want to go home. In the present, Brenner furiously throws his papers and tells Six they'll continue the experiment after she eats until they get the results he wants. Thanks to Six, everyone gets waffles for dinner that night. When Ricky joins them, he mentions Brenner's in a terrible mood. This reminds Six of her first meeting with Brenner, how calm and collected he seemed, how she'd been convinced to join the experiment at one of her lowest points in her life. Six asks Ricky about the tank. He explains since his powers rely on speech, they're still figuring out how to adapt it for him. The twins reveal they'll be going in the tank soon, too. While Ricky and Six are horrified, the twins are excited. After all, Dr. Brenner told them they were special.
After dinner, as Six is being led back to her room, 3 uses his powers to send away the orderly so they can talk privately. It works, but he ends up bleeding from his nose. Six drags him to the bathroom so he can clean up. Once they're truly alone and away from cameras, Ricky forces the conversation. Six opens up about the bad feeling she's had, how her gut knows something terrible is coming. This moment brings them closer, and they end up reconciling with a kiss. The next day, Brenner brings them to observe 9's trial session after 3's little rebellion yesterday. According to Brenner, is dedicated and loyal. She believes in the experiments, and 6 and 3 should learn from her. 9 can theoretically ignite objects with her powers, so she's trying to light cotton balls doused in gasoline. 6 thinks this is way too dangerous for a child, but Brenner reassures her that 9 is too young to fully ignite fuels. This is just practice. But to 9, this isn't practice. This is her chance to prove she's powerful and special. 9 concentrates with intense focus, staring down the cotton in front of her. That's when 6 has a vision.
She sees blood dripping in a cold, black void and knows something horrible is about to happen. She tries to get Brenner to stop 9, but it's too late. The lab tech with 9 starts slamming on the glass as all the blood in his body reaches boiling temperature. 9 is bleeding from her nose and eyes, but she doesn't stop until she sees smoke from the cotton balls. Then she passes out. They all end up in the medical ward. 3 and 6 are having their own meltdowns. These are just kids. They shouldn't be going through this. Brenner coerces them into leaving the twins alone. Hours later, he visits 6 in her room. 6 knows what's coming. Brenner explains the theory. 9's powers got out of control, and the heat she generated was attracted to the warmest thing in the room, which happened to be their lab tech. 6 hopes to hear the program is shutting down, but instead, Brenner says they'll continue with improved safety measures. Brenner thinks 6 is worried about her own safety, so he keeps reassuring her about safety protocols. But 6 sees through his lies now. Unfortunately, Brenner reads her expression and changes tactics. He tells 6 that if she had better control over her powers, if she'd had a clearer handle on her visions, she could have predicted what happened sooner. They could have saved the lab tech's life and prevented 9 from being injured. 6 is taken aback. For a moment she believes him, but then realizes Brenner is just like her father, manipulating her to exploit her powers for his own gain. So at breakfast the next day, 6 secretly passes Ricky a note that reads, "We're getting out of here." It's the night before the escape, and in her nightmares, 6 has another vision of the Upside Down. This time, a human figure with a head and a gun bursts through the door. But when she wakes, she's not scared. She's smiling. Today is the day she's finally going to be free. At breakfast, she tells Ricky today's the day. But they hit a snag when an orderly comes to take 6 away because Brenner has a session scheduled in 30 minutes. 6 tries to pretend she's not feeling well, and Ricky backs her up, but the orderly doesn't budge. He assumes the teenage lovers just want alone time and promises to give them extra time after the session. Francine takes matters into her own hands. She bites down on her tongue, spits out blood, and pretends to have a seizure. This allows Ricky to make his escape, and 6 ends up in the medical ward next to 9. Marcy is still beside her sister, and when 6 tries to talk to her, Marcy finally reveals their real names. The doctors don't expect Jaime to wake up from her coma. Marcy starts crying because she doesn't know what she'll do without her sister. 6 tells Marcy her real name, Francine, and comforts her. She tells Marcy she'll take care of her, has her lie down in the bed, and hugs the kid tightly while promising everything will be okay. While asleep, 6 has that same vision again. Waffles, Marcy, Christmas lights, and a door leading to pure light. She wakes up, tells Marcy about her plan, and asks her to say goodbye to her sister. Struggling to keep it together, Marcy does what she's told. That's when the alarms start blaring. This is the signal. 6 grabs Marcy and runs out of the medical ward. She uses her powers to navigate the facility without being caught, helping them avoid police officers. She eventually leads them to the door from her visions. But then she stumbles, and her nose starts bleeding. She's been pushing herself hard, but she doesn't care as long as it helps them escape. They walk through the door and emerge in the nearly empty parking lot of Hawkins' laboratory. Before they can head into the woods, they're held at gunpoint by police officers and the woman searching for Jane. The orderly from the facility asks the police officers to stand down after Ricky reminds him Brenner would have their skin if anything happened to his precious subjects. But then 6 has a vision, one of the officers losing his cool and shooting Ricky. So 6 gambles with her own life instead. She orders Ricky to run away with Marcy. As soon as they bolt, while 6 stands her ground with her arms raised, just like in her vision, one of the officers pulls the trigger. 6 gets shot instead of Ricky. With her last breath, she orders him to run and take care of Marcy. Brenner rushes outside, and when he sees 6, he tells her it didn't have to be this way, but 6 just laughs and mocks him. After all, she finally did it. She changed the future. she changed what she saw in her visions. Francine passes away while Marcy and Ricky run into the woods, and he promises to take care of the kid just like Six had promised.
Stranger Things, Into the Fire.
We open in 1985 with a masked princess trapped in a tower. She's regularly fed medicine to keep the cold away, but she doesn't understand why they can't just turn up the heat. When a crow calls her a good girl for taking her medicine, the princess says, "If I was, I wouldn't be here." But this isn't actually a fairy tale. We'll find out what's really happening soon enough. Cut to Marcy in Boston, trying to live a normal life. She's got school, friends named Sarah and Don, and a crush on a boy named Josh. They're helping her pick out a jacket, and their conversation reveals that Ricky still takes care of her, and that both her friends have a crush on him. When Marcy gets home, she's frustrated to find Ricky's already packed up and ready to leave. It's spring break, and she just wants to be normal for once. But Ricky's got a new lead on 8. Given their past, staying on the move is safer than settling down. Marcy storms off and locks herself in her room, but Ricky eventually convinces her. He's not trying to ruin her life, he's protecting her. Even though Marcy doesn't have powers, she was still part of the program, which makes her dangerous to the people who ran it. Ricky's been in the program since he was a kid, and he knows how it works. If they can't control the kids with powers, they'd rather see them dead. Just like what happened to Six. Francine died so they could escape, which is why they need to help any other survivors now that the lab's shut down. Marcy wants normalcy, but she understands. That night, they load up their van and leave Boston behind. By morning, they're in Hastings Glen, where Ricky works his magic. He walks into the local police station and uses his charm powers on the receptionist, pretending to be a reporter to access case files. He discovers the perpetrators wore Halloween masks, and though the cops don't suspect it, Ricky's pretty sure these were kids connected to 8. The victim was an orderly from Hawkins' lab. Ricky doesn't want to, but he understands why some kids might want revenge. Before he can read more, 2 officers walk in, and he's forced to charm them too and make a quick exit. His nose bleeds from overusing his powers, but he's used to it by now. Back in the car, Ricky tells Marcy everything. They decide to keep tracking 8, and after asking around a few towns, they find her in an abandoned barn. As they approach, one of 8's friends, a guy named Axel, holds them at gunpoint. Ricky uses his powers to calm him down. Axel casually leads them inside to meet 8's gang. The moment 8 sees Marcy, she uses her illusion powers to transform their surroundings into a fantastical forest filled with animals. Everyone's taken aback. Marcy has to break it to 8 that she's not Jamie. Jamie was the one with fire powers who could burn things down. 8 relaxes and explains she thought Marcy was Jamie, which is why she used her powers. She didn't want Jamie burning down the barn. This is when it hits Marcy. Her sister is still alive. Not just alive, but out there somewhere all by herself. We cut back to the masked princess and learned this is actually Jamie. She yearns to escape the tower that traps her, but the tower also keeps her safe. It keeps the world safe from her because she hasn't burned it down yet. The bird in her delusion is actually a small flame she's controlling in her hand. 8, whose real name is Kali, starts telling them everything she knows. The program that promised to save them actually just wanted to use them. The woman who showed up when Francine broke them free was 11's mother. While Ricky and Marcy escaped, everyone else was trapped in the lab facing Brenner's rage. Kali stops here. She doesn't want to say more. Ricky agrees, not wanting this conversation under the eyes of strangers. But Kali trusts her friends, and Marcy is desperate to know about her sister. So Kali reluctantly continues. Marcy thought Jamie was as good as dead. They told her Jamie would never wake up. But that wasn't true. Jamie did wake up, more powerful than ever. That's when Brenner started spinning his web of lies. He told Jamie that Marcy escaped without her, that she abandoned her. This broke Jamie so badly it started affecting her powers and Brenner's experiments. Since Brenner saw the kids as nothing but tools, this was unacceptable. He assigned 8 to take care of Jamie. 8 gave Jamie something to live for by showing her visions of a fantastical fairyland filled with life and light. For once, Jamie was happy. But eventually, cracks appeared. Jamie was powerful, and Callie wasn't. One day when Jamie tried showing her powers to the animals in the vision to keep them warm, Callie got scared and the vision collapsed. Jamie lashed out, almost punching her. The animals were her friends, and she wanted Callie to bring them back. Callie shows this last meeting with Jamie to Marcy and Ricky using her powers. That was the last time she saw her. Callie talks about how the facility broke them all in different ways. 11 suffered the same fate, though she seems to be doing much better now with close friends and Hawkins. Marcy and Ricky are surprised to hear about 11's fate, but they're still desperate to find Jamie. Callie sighs and shows them her collection of Hawkins' ID cards. Her gang uses these to track down everyone who wronged her and the other children. Once they find them, they make sure those technicians and doctors can't hurt any more kids. Marcy and Ricky know what this means. They know what it implies. Neither wants to be part of it. When Callie hands over Dr. Morris's card, they quickly take it and part ways. As they leave, Callie invites them to join her gang if they ever want to, but they politely decline without burning bridges. After driving out of town, Ricky stops at a payphone to contact a private detective who can help track down Dr. Morris. Over the next day or two, they wait. Ricky anticipates what's coming, while Marcy is haunted by her past. Through her memories, we learn Brenner's MO was manipulating children, gaslighting them into thinking they were their only salvation. That's exactly what he did with Jamie and Marcy after he rescued them. That's why he allowed Marcy to stay at the facility even without powers. Ricky realizes Marcy's lost in the past and forces them both to enjoy breakfast milkshakes, reminding her she is doing well. Hawkins' lab is gone and she still has a life to live. Meanwhile, Jamie is growing more delirious each day. She hates taking daily medication, and the temptation to use her powers to fix everything grows stronger. This delusion somehow reaches Marcy, because just like Jamie, she wakes up feeling cold the next morning. Ricky tries talking to her about it, but Marcy brushes it off. This is also the day they meet Dr. Morris. Ricky's contact finally got back to them. Hours later, they're outside Morris's house. They ring the bell, hoping for a cordial conversation, but when Morris opens the door, he's already pointing a gun at them. Morris isn't stupid. He knows what's been happening to people who worked at the lab. He's heard about 8 and her gang's crimes. Naturally, he assumes Marcy and Ricky are here to kill him too.
Ricky uses his powers on Morris, and the doctor calms down. But before Ricky can disarm him, Marcy pushes him away, grabs the gun, and holds Morris at gunpoint. She's had enough. Frustrated, angry, and desperate, she says, "You're going to tell me where my sister is, and you're going to tell me now." This outburst shocks even Ricky. He tries calming Marcy down, but she threatens to shoot him too. She's sure Ricky will use his powers on her to fix this, but he assures her he would never do that. Marcy eventually lowers the gun for her sister's sake. That's when Morris starts talking. He's a broken man. Horrible, yes, but broken. He tells Marcy that Jamie was one of their most promising candidates, except she couldn't control her powers just like the others. This led to a lot of deaths. When Brenner assigned 8 to pacify and control her, Morris knew it was the calm before the storm. By then, Morris had been working closely with 9. He was hoping for a breakthrough, but things changed when Brenner decided to focus all resources on 11. 11 had control. She had the strength Brenner needed, so he abandoned all other candidates. To Brenner, the other children were now liabilities. He ordered Morris to take care of 9 himself. Morris was many things: a bad man, a bad doctor, a failed scientist. Many would call him a monster, but even he had limits, lines he wouldn't cross. So instead of killing 9, he secretly placed her in an institutional facility that owed him favors. He personally crafted her medication schedule to keep her sedated indefinitely. This confession doesn't sit well with Marcy.
Morris essentially had her sister on a permanent drug-induced trip. But to Morris, this was the best he could do then or now. Ricky intervenes and demands the institution's address. Morris hands it over but warns them about 9. She's volatile, manipulated beyond what her psyche could handle. If neither Brenner, Morris, nor the program could control her, what makes Ricky and Marcy think they can? We switch to Jamie. The temptation to use her powers has reached exponential heights. In her masked illusion, we see her finally giving in. She walks through the tower, but something's changed. On the walls is a mirror, but instead of reflecting Jamie, it shows Marcy. Marcy and Ricky leave Morris's place with the address. They fight and argue on the drive back, but both understand where the other is coming from. Ricky never wanted to hurt Marcy, and she never meant to threaten him. She just wanted to save her sister, and Ricky wants the same. They quickly reconcile. This is when we see Jamie deciding that the image in the mirror is the one she hates. It's the person who set her down this path, who caused all her misery. Jamie punches the mirror. In the real world, she's punched her cell wall, wounding her hand and splattering blood everywhere. A nurse walks in, begrudgingly, but instead of bandaging Jamie's hand, she decides to drug her. But Jamie isn't a princess trapped in a tower anymore. She doesn't need a knight in shining armor to rescue her. She's going to save herself. Before the nurse can drug her, Jamie grabs her hand and sets it on fire. The nurse screams in pain, but Jamie sees this as her chance to escape. As she imagines leaving her tower, she finds a huge wildflower in the woods that needs to be burned down. The magic she feared for so long had become her savior, and there's no backing down now. In reality, Jamie is setting a small paper flower ablaze on a notice board, followed by burning down the entire facility. Before security can catch her, Jamie escapes into the woods. Marcy and Ricky are driving to the facility when they spot fire trucks heading in the same direction. They fear what this means, and upon arrival, their suspicions are confirmed. The entire facility is ablaze, swarming with firemen, police, first responders, and journalists. Jamie is now fleeing through the woods, feeling free for the first time. Though the masked princess smiles in her visions, in reality, Jamie is scared and alone. Ricky uses his powers on the detective in charge to find out what happened. Everyone inside is safe with some injuries, but Jamie, the girl who caused the fire, is missing. He tells Marcy, and she quickly figures out Jamie is likely run into the woods based on what Collie showed them. She forces them to split up, and Ricky reluctantly lets her go on her own. When she's gone, he sarcastically comments that he isn't old enough to deal with teenagers. Marcy runs through the woods, screaming Jamie's name, hoping to finally reunite with her sister while haunted by their memories. Jamie, meanwhile, has picked up a stick and set it ablaze. To the masked princess in her delusions, this is her weapon, a channel for her powers, a way to save herself. That's when Marcy stumbles upon her, but instead of reconciling, Jamie swats the burning stick at her and screams, "You're the one! You did this! I won't let you hurt me again!" Marcy, still on the ground, begs her sister to realize who she is. She's Marcy, her twin, her sister, her only family. But Jamie can't be reasoned with. To the masked princess, her reflection in the mirror is trying to trap her again. The reflection wants her to give in. Jamie won't do that anymore, so she swats the flaming stick at Marcy again and again. Before she can deal the final blow, Ricky shows up and shoots the stick right out of her hand using Morris's gun. He puts out the flames while asking if Marcy is okay. That's when Marcy lashes out at him, leaving Ricky extremely puzzled. What did he do wrong? He was just saving Marcy, the only family he had left. Marcy makes him realize that Jamie is family too. She is, and always has been, part of their family. Their argument brings Jamie momentarily back to reality. Though Ricky is still apprehensive, Marcy persuades him this is the only way. Only she can bring Jamie back and save her. So she reaches out to her sister again. This time, the masked princess hesitates because the reflection in the mirror speaks of her sister. It speaks like her sister and wants to save her. But the masked princess also knows this is the reflection that abandoned her. It's why she wears a mask and hates her face. Little do they know, the stick was only a tool. The real power lies within her. Jamie conjures a fireball. Ricky instantly reacts, but Marcy forces him to stand down. That's when Marcy confesses to Jamie that it was wrong to abandon her sister, wrong to never check in and find out what became of her. But now that they're here, it doesn't have to be that way anymore. Though Marcy hates herself as much as Jamie hates her for the abandonment, she's still happy to see her sister alive and well. She begs Jamie to come back to her. Instead of using her powers for destruction, the masked princess uses them to melt the glass. Jamie removes her mask, gives up being the masked princess, and walks into the mirror to reunite with her reflection, her sister. They hug. Though Ricky hates interrupting this moment, he reminds Marcy why they need to leave immediately. The next day, Marcy and Jamie are sleeping soundly in a motel. But something haunts Ricky. While his sisters sleep, he walks away and drives to Morris's home. He takes out Morris's gun and aims it at Morris. But this is just a prank. Instead of shooting the doctor, Ricky returns his gun. But this isn't the end. Ricky has seen what became of Jamie, what the program did to her. The same program Morris was a part of for years. Ricky isn't letting this go. Though Morris may have done some good, it doesn't erase his past or make up for his crimes. Ricky uses his powers, makes Morris realize the monster he is, and asks him to do what needs to be done to atone for his sins. Ricky is beyond angry. Blood from his nose is smeared across his face. But this man wronged his sisters. This man is part of why they are so damaged, and he can't let it go. After using his powers, Ricky simply leaves. As he walks back to his car, we hear a gunshot in the background. Morris has shot himself. This is the thing about trauma. It doesn't get destroyed. It doesn't go away. It just gets passed from one person to another. Jamie may have been saved. She may have finally stopped being the masked princess, but Ricky carries that burden now. Seeing Jamie that way, the twin sister of the girl he saved all those years ago, the girl Francine promised to keep safe, broke Ricky.
Stranger Things Science Camp. We kick things off with Dawn, one of the camp counselors, sprinting through the woods with a terrified look on her face. She even trips and falls during the chase. When she reaches the lake, we find out she's actually trying to save her precious hairdryer. Lori, another counselor, is dunking it in the water because she can't handle Dawn using it so early in the morning. Hours later, camp officially begins, and all the campers arrive for summer. Among them is Dustin. He's pumped to have a fun summer with people who actually get him. But as soon as he steps off the bus, reality hits. At science camp or Hawkins, something's never changed no matter where you go. He spots two kids bullying a third one just because he goes to public school. Dustin knows exactly what it feels like to be bullied. After everything he faced last year, he's not backing down from these clowns. He confronts the two bullies and flips the script when they mock his teeth. Dustin claims his cleidocranial dysplasia is a basic mutation that makes him like the X-Men. The bullies should know about it. They did sign up for science camp after all. Dustin mocking them catches everyone's attention, and the embarrassed bullies decide to leave both kids alone. Once they're gone, everyone claps for Dustin. The little kid thanks him, and Dustin drops some wisdom. Tough guy bullies hate looking weak, so smart guy bullies hate looking like morons. That's exactly what Dustin did to drive them away. The kid introduces himself as Steven, and after getting acquainted, they head off together. That night, we catch up with the counselors. Stephanie's reading up on camp activities to prep for the next day. But the rest of them are busy debating and betting on which kid's gonna throw the first punch this year. The stakes? Beer. Stephanie doesn't believe a violent fight could break out at camp. This is science camp, and most kids here are probably nerds. Sadly, the track record proves her wrong. Every year, someone throws a punch. The other girls start teasing Stephanie for actually caring about the job, and their conversation reveals most counselors are only here for the money. They don't care about the kids or the camp, and whatever Stephanie cares about will disappear after tonight. The next day, Dustin and the other kids go through various camp activities, including building and launching model rockets. At lunch, Dustin tells Steven about his time at the arcade and how they have a friend named Max who can destroy them all. Every time Dustin mentions Max, there's a hint of sadness because she chose Lucas over him. But they're all friends now, so he keeps telling himself it's no big deal.
That's when the two bullies from earlier show up again to harass Dustin for lying. Dustin simply turns around and says, "Sounds like you two have never talked to a girl before." That's all it takes to shut them up. Dustin wishes he could tell them about 11, even introduce them to set them straight, but he knows these are secrets he has to keep. When things get heated, Dustin mentions the high school dance and how his D&D campaign has 2 girls in it, but neither bully believes him. So Dustin goes overboard and claims he's now the dungeon master of his own game. Steven is in awe and wants Dustin to run a game for them at camp. Dustin hesitates because he doesn't have dice and his other stuff, and the bullies use this chance to call him a liar again. That's when Dustin loses it. He storms up from his seat and loudly proclaims in front of the entire camp that he'll be running his own game in a week or 2. This wasn't what he wanted to do, and deep down, Dustin knows he's way out of his depth. That night, Stephanie sneaks into the abandoned cabin to prove to her fellow counselors she can be fun too. Inside, she quickly finds the hidden beer and pops open a can. But before she can take a sip, she hears someone entering the shed. Naturally, she apologizes and offers a beer to the figure, thinking it might be another counselor who followed her. But there's no counselor. It's a masked and hooded figure wielding a bloodied screwdriver. The news of Stephanie leaving camp spreads like wildfire. But instead of news about her body being found, everyone's told she simply left in the middle of the night without telling anyone. All she left was a 3-word note: "I quit, goodbye." Stephanie was Dawn's roommate, which means Dawn now has the cabin to herself. Eventually, the news reaches Dustin and Steven. Though Steven finds it weird someone would just leave camp like that, Dustin reassures him everything's fine. After all, she left a note. Steven finds the scenario too eerie and compares it to Friday the 13th. This gets them talking about Dustin's upcoming D&D game again. Dustin realizes he should actually start preparing for it, even though he doesn't want to. His pride's on the line now, after that lunchroom declaration. He decides to head into the woods to prep his campaign in peace. On the way there, the 2 bullies start mocking him again. Dustin hits back with words that hurt, but through the banter and his memories of last year, he comes up with an idea for his campaign. He can't tell them what actually happened in Hawkins, but he can use those events, make them more fantastical, and build his campaign around them. The 2 bullies are puzzled when Dustin tells him his campaign will be set in a magic school. But once he leaves, one of them confesses he'd actually like to be part of Dustin's D&D game because it sounds fun. Dustin spends the rest of the day daydreaming and preparing. At lunch, we're finally introduced to Susie. It's clear she's had a crush on Dustin for a while, and today's the day she's doing something about it. She spots Dawn alone at a table and talks to her about how to approach boys you like. Dawn advises her to talk about something they have in common. When Susie can't think of anything, Dawn suggests talking about something science-y. They're at science camp, after all. So Susie approaches Dustin in the evening while he's preparing his campaign. She starts by talking about science, but Dustin tells her he's actually working on his D&D campaign. He starts explaining how all of this started, how he never wanted to host the campaign in the first place, but now he has to. Dustin's just sharing, but Susie's nervous and assumes Dustin is telling her she's wasting his time because he's so busy. She apologizes for bothering him and runs away. Though Dustin tries to stop her and explain he didn't mean it that way, Susie's already out of earshot. That night, while Dawn is alone in her room, someone keeps knocking on her door. Every time she opens it, there's no one there. Dawn assumes it's Chris doing this because he's had a crush on her since camp started. But when it happens for the 3rd time, Dawn finds someone actually standing there. The mysterious figure from before, now wearing an Einstein mask and wielding a screwdriver. Dawn screams when she's attacked, and this scream is heard by Steven and Dustin. Dustin grabs his flashlight and decides to investigate, with a scared Steven begrudgingly tagging along. They make their way to Dawn's cabin, but when they enter through the open door, they find no one inside. Dawn's belongings are still scattered around, but she's nowhere to be seen. The next morning, Susie decides to visit Dawn to discuss what happened with Dustin. To her surprise, Dawn's cabin is completely empty. Unlike last night, all her belongings are gone. Lori shows up and tells Susie that Dawn just like Stephanie, left in the middle of the night. Lori's pretty rude about the whole thing. Susie doesn't appreciate that, but she's more focused on the fact that if any more counselors leave, the camp might have to shut down early. We see Dustin and the other kids participating in races where solving math problems is part of the activity. To Dustin's surprise, Susie is faster than he is. After the race, Dustin decides to work on his campaign again. Though the bullies try interrupting and mocking him, Dustin simply shows them the middle finger and continues into the woods. We then see the mysterious figure dressing up again, this time in the middle of the day, to take out another victim. Dustin's busy preparing his campaign when he hears someone trying to sneak up on him. Assuming it's the bullies here to harass him again, Dustin screams, "Are you at least smart enough to figure out where to stick it, or do I need to draw a diagram?" Unfortunately for Dustin, it's not the bullies. It's Susie, who is trying to talk to him again. This insult leaves her in tears, and she runs away. Knowing he messed up big time, Dustin runs after her. Meanwhile, Lori's trying to smoke in the woods without alerting anyone. The match she lights flies out of her hand, and she frantically stomps on it to prevent a fire. That's when she's ambushed by the mysterious killer in the Einstein mask. As soon as she sees him, she starts screaming. Her screams are heard by Chris and another counselor, and they both console Lori when she comes running to them in tears. She tells them someone tried to kill her, and Chris instantly decides to call her boyfriend Joshua so they can discuss how to handle this. Dustin catches up to Susie, apologizes for what he said, and they properly introduce themselves. But before they can talk more, they overhear Lori telling the others what happened. So they decide to sneak closer to the cabin to hear everything. Joshua is horrified to learn someone tried to stab his girlfriend with a screwdriver and wants to report the incident. But Chris and the rest aren't sure about it. After all, it sounds like a harmless prank. If they report it, the camp will be shut down and they'll be out of jobs. They convince Lori and Joshua to hunt down the killer on their own before this gets out of hand. But Dustin and Susie have heard everything, and Dustin has his own plans. He loves this camp, and there's no way he's letting some wannabe murderer spoil his summer. Though Susie's apprehensive at first, Dustin convinces her by explaining the killer only targets counselors. He doesn't see the campers as any threat, which makes them perfect for this job. They run back to Dustin's cabin where, surprisingly, Steven's hanging out with the two boys who were bullying him on the first day. Dustin is surprised by this, and it turns out they came to witness the start of his D&D campaign. When Dustin tells them they'll have to postpone the game, they start mocking him again. But Susie stands up for him. She's seen him working hard on the campaign and won't let these boys diminish his work. Dustin is surprised and grateful, and all the kids quickly unite when they're told about the murderer and how the camp's at risk of being closed early if they don't catch him. After a moment of silence, one of the kids asks, "So, how do we stop the killer?" Dustin replies, "Time for a real-life adventuring party." Dustin and the rest of the campers, including Susie, Steven, and the bullies, make their way through the forest hunting for Lori's attacker. As they talk, we learn none of the other kids from the other cabins wanted to join this hunt. This brings up the postponed D&D game, and Dustin learns the bullies actually wanted to be part of his campaign. Their names are Trevor and Dean. Dean's brother is a DM but has his own game going while he's at camp. Trevor has always wanted to play D&D, but none of his friends back home are interested. They introduce themselves and discuss how to catch the killer. Trevor suggests splitting up, but everyone turns him down. Susie suggests Dustin should be in charge, and anyone who goes against him gets the biggest stink eye from her. Step 1, they stay together. Step 2, they find the next target. But before Dustin can get to step 3, Trevor starts walking away, forcing the entire group to stop talking and start doing. Lori's being forced to rest in the boys' cabin while they go hunt for the attacker. Joshua insists on reporting the incident, but Paul and Chris aren't keen on it. They don't want to lose their jobs, plus they're not even sure if this was a real attack or a prank. Joshua reluctantly agrees, but insists he'll inform the camp owners if they can't resolve this in the next 2 hours. As the boys head into the woods to track down the attacker, they hear a branch breaking behind them, which tenses everyone up. When they hear nothing else, they chalk it up to being a wild animal and continue. Little do they know, Dustin and the gang are trailing them. Though Stephen thinks joining forces with the counselors is a decent idea, Dustin and the rest know better. The counselors won't let them help, and it might get them in trouble. This makes Dustin reminisce about Steve and how he never treated him like a kid on their adventures. Soon, the boys are ambushed by the Einstein mask attacker out of nowhere. During this confrontation, the killer manages to stab Joshua in the chest. Paul and Chris rush to his aid, but before the attacker can have another go, Dustin and the kids pounce on him. Stephen gets the screwdriver away from the killer, and Dustin instantly rips off the Einstein mask. To everyone's surprise, it's Lori underneath, and she's been attacking the counselors this whole time. She begrudgingly confesses the screwdriver is fake, and that's when they realize her boyfriend, Joshua, was in on this the entire time. They both wanted out of this job, but if either quit on their own, their parents wouldn't let them hear the end of it. So they decided to stage attacks on the counselors so the camp would shut down and they could go home. This baffles Dustin and the kids. How could Lori and Joshua go through so much trouble to shut down the camp just because they don't have the guts to talk to their parents about it? How could they ruin everyone's summer just because they're cowards? Dustin gives a big, inspiring speech about what the camp means to him and all his friends. By the end of it, Paul's at Joshua's throat over this because he was about to lose his job over this elaborate, cowardly prank. He's going to make sure the camp owners and Joshua and Lori's parents hear about this, ensuring they never get jobs at the camp again. His friends, including Trevor and Dean, compliment Dustin once everything's done, and though Dustin doesn't see it yet, Susie is clearly impressed by him. At lunch, Stephen and Dustin discuss the D&D campaign, and we learn everyone, including Susie, is excited to be part of it. That's when Susie pulls Dustin away to talk in private. And wouldn't you know it, she's the one who confesses her feelings for him before Dustin can even utter a word. Dustin is speechless for a few seconds, but then expresses that he likes Susie even more than she likes him. In fact, he thinks she's braver than he is for taking this step, while he was desperately trying to muster up the courage to do the same. In the end, though, they're both worried about how they'll keep this relationship going once camp is over. For now, they decide to cherish and enjoy the time they have together. As they walk away, they discuss taking part in the talent show and are mulling over the idea of performing Never-Ending Story as a duet together.
Stranger Things and Dungeons and Dragons.
Lucas, Mike, and Will are getting chased by neighborhood bullies like usual. Mike and Lucas duck into an alley and sneak through an open door, and boom, they find themselves in the back of this old bookshop with towers of books stacked everywhere. The owner catches them snooping around and notices them checking out his miniatures of the Battle of Waterloo. He gets super excited, telling them how that battle changed all of Europe and the entire world. Mike's zoning out, but Lucas spots a dragon miniature in the collection. That's when the owner drops the bombshell. It's from this new game they've been testing in the store called Dungeons and Dragons. An hour later, Mike and Lucas are practically bursting with excitement as they pitch the game to Will. They go on and on about this fantasy world with limitless possibilities. To get the game, all they need is to bring in old used books for store credit. So, the three of them load up a toy wagon with books and head to the store. On the way, they're dreaming about their haul and chatting about the new movie Alien when their bullies show up again. Lucas stands his ground and throws some books at them while Mike and Will drag the wagon up a hill. Lucas catches up, but he loses his jacket in the scuffle, though he never really liked it anyway. Then disaster strikes. Mike loses his grip, and the wagon crashes into a muddy ditch, taking all the books with it. When they show up at the store with muddy books, the owner takes pity on them and donates a basic Dungeons & Dragons pack anyway, as long as they promise to keep the mess out of his shop. They spend the entire day learning the game, and it completely takes over their lives. They're discussing campaigns at school, couldn't care less if girls think they're dorky, and that's when they meet Dustin at lunch. He overhears Lucas saying it's impossible to roll a 10 on 2 six-sided dice, and Dustin corrects him. There's actually a 16.67% chance. The boys are impressed, and when they tell Dustin their campaign involves tons of math, he's all in. That's how the 4 boys became best friends. Will the Wise, Lucas the Ranger, Dustin the Dwarf, and Mike the Dungeon Master. Their legend was born. Over the next few months, they battle monsters, level up their characters, become heroes, and even build Fort Byers out in the woods. Then, on April 7th, 1981, they celebrate Mike's birthday by defeating Cinderstone, the fire giant, and wrapping up their campaign. Mike's feeling a little down because his friends are level 3 and he's out of modules to continue. But then the boys surprise him with a gift, the next Dungeons & Dragons set they need. Mike realizes their journey together is only just beginning. This picks up on November 27, 1983, shortly after Will's rescue from the Upside Down. The boys visit him in the hospital, and after some joking around about hospital smells, they ask how he's doing. Will tells them he's getting discharged the next day, and everyone celebrates. Dustin and Lucas say they can't wait for things to go back to normal, and Will agrees. But Mike picks up on something. Will is struggling and desperately needs things to feel normal again. That night, Mike stays up trying to make their next campaign session more exciting and fun. But here's the problem. How can fighting imaginary monsters compare to what they just went through in real life? Frustrated, Mike chucks his Demogorgon miniature across the room and storms out of the basement. At lunch the next day, Dustin and Lucas are hyped about the new arcade opening, but when they notice Mike's mood, they reassure him that Dungeons & Dragons is still their favorite game. Mike smirks and thanks them. That evening, Mike visits Will and realizes his friend needs a win more than ever. Will knows his character should already be dead. If Will the Wise had failed his fireball roll, the Demogorgon would have attacked next, and with his low health, he would have died. Mike quickly makes up an excuse. Will the Wise won't die because he still has the gemstone the Proud Princess gave him. It's actually a scarab of protection. Since the Demogorgon's claws are cursed, Will would be saved. Will appreciates it, but a handout like this just makes him feel out of place again. That night, while Mike's designing the campaign, he crashes hard and screams. His older sister Nancy checks on him, and Mike reluctantly tells her about his problem. He wants the Hydra to be their next big monster, but Lucas is already wielding Winter's Dark Bite, which is super effective against it. Lucas will likely go first in initiative order, which means Will won't get to be the hero. Nancy listens, and then she realizes what Mike is really trying to do: help Will feel like a hero instead of a victim. She hugs him and tells him things won't ever be the same, but that doesn't mean they have to be bad. Mike and the boys are still best friends, and Dungeons & Dragons kept them together. Nancy even wishes she had friends like Mike does. Mike realizes the game was never about him or his campaign. It was always about telling a story together with his friends. So, the next weekend, when everyone shows up, they start the game again like nothing changed. Will and Mike explain how Will the Wise survives the Demogorgon's attack using the Scarab of Protection, and their campaign continues. But in the last panel, we see the shadow of the Mind Flayer lurking above Will, and nobody has a clue. This takes place 7 months after 11 closed the gate. Everyone knows about 11 living with Hopper now, so Max and 11 join the group at Mike's place for game day. Will greets them while cosplaying as Will the Wise, which surprises everyone. Mike's mom promises to order pizza, and the group gets Max and 11 up to speed. Mike teaches them the basic rules, and they start creating characters. 11 chooses to become a magic-using elf. When Will tries to say something, Mike pulls him aside. This is a great chance to impress 11. He asks Will to be the dungeon master and play a cleric so Mike can become Mike the Mighty, a paladin who uses the power of light to defeat evil. Lucas and Dustin find these changes distracting, but they're determined to play anyway. Max tries to become an imaginary race called the Zoomer, and Will helps redirect her to become a rogue. Max names her character Max the Zoomer. And their new campaign begins. 3 new heroes and 2 reincarnated old ones make their way through a canyon called the Broken Rock. A cave fisher attacks and traps Lucas in his web. They roll initiative. 11 uses magic missile on the creature. Max races up the cliff and cuts the web to free Lucas. But when it's the cave fisher's turn, it attacks 11 because she did the most damage. Mike steps in to take the hit instead. 11 retaliates by using the spell Shatter. She's new to this and concentrates a bit too hard, which creates a small quake that moves their miniatures and cracks the wall behind them. A shadowy creature rushes out and everyone jumps into action, fearing the worst. They track it to a nearby closet while Mike does his best to keep his mom from finding out. The creature evades them again and runs outside. It's hiding in the bushes, and 11 uses her powers to separate the plants. They discover it's just a mama rat and her babies. Instead of getting rid of them, Mike and 11 bring the rat family some food and a box with blankets to keep them safe. On the way back, the 2 of them hold hands, much to Hopper's dismay, who's already there, waiting to take 11 home. The kids part ways, and Dustin mentions he's leaving for science camp in a few days. His friends promise to hold off on the campaign until he returns. Will is moving out. The boys decide to visit their favorite bookstore one last time, where their journey started. But they're sad to learn they're closing. It was still a good idea. On the way back, bullies tried to harass them, but the boys have grown so much that they simply ignore them. On the walk home, Will offers to give up being dungeon master for tomorrow since he won't be around after he moves, but the boys shut that down instantly. Will's been trying to get them to play all summer, and they won't let him give up now. So, Will promises them an epic last adventure.
The next day, after finishing most of the packing, the gang sits down to continue their campaign. They're on the last leg of it. Having defeated most of the threats in their world, the ghostly apparition of Will the Wise appears before them from beyond the realm for one last job. The wizard opens a portal, and on the other side is a swarming army of demons. This is their final task, their chance to wipe evil away from the realm. Without hesitation, the heroes jump through the portal and start the fight. They slash, punch, use summons, and cast spells. Demons fall like flies, but their numbers are overwhelming. Max is especially invested, slamming her fist on the map. But 11's having second thoughts. After everything with the mind flare, losing her powers, watching people die, this overwhelming fight is affecting her. She decides to give up and gets up to leave, but Mike and the others quickly stop her. Characters die in the game all the time, and that's part of the fun. This is their world, their story that they're all weaving together. 11th sits back down, determined to finish this fight with her friends. Instead of attacking, 11's character uses True Sight to look for a weak point. Will reveals this was all an illusion created by Will the Wise, who's been possessed by the last remaining true evil in the realm after the destruction of the Elder Tree. The real fight begins, and eventually the heroes prevail. They banish the evil out of Will the Wise, but the old wizard is now dying. As Mike the Mighty holds him in his arms, Will the Wise tells them how he was possessed. They try to rush him to healers, but Will the Wise says his time has come. Things change, and the heroes are simply going to have to accept that. The gang desperately tells Will the Wise they can't do this without him, but Will, the real Will, says they already have. It's a tear-jerking, emotional end to their campaign with Will as Dungeon Master, and it couldn't have been more perfect. They all hug each other. Afterwards, Mike helps Will with the last of his packing. He learns that Will decided to donate all of his Dungeons & Dragons books because, just like them, someone else might need them. Someone else might need to learn that they can be heroes too.
Stranger Things, The Tomb of YBWEN. The series kicks off with a flashback from 2 months earlier. Will's in a car with Bob, his mom's boyfriend, who tells him about a nightmare clown called Mr. Baldo that used to terrify him as a kid. Bob explains how he finally conquered his fear by screaming at the clown to disappear. "Easy peasy," he said. But for Will, fighting his own monsters didn't work out the same way. When he stood up to the mind flayer, Bob disappeared instead, and that guilt is eating him alive. Fast forward to January 13th, 1985. Will's friends are wrapped up in their girlfriends. Mike and Lucas are busy, and even though Dustin invites Will to look at a science camp catalog, Will declines. He's clearly struggling, but nobody notices. When he gets home, he finds his mom crying over Bob's photo. She hugs him and says it's okay to be sad, but Will isn't sad. He's angry. Bob died because of him, and that guilt is crushing him. Mr. Clark, Will's teacher, tries to cheer him up by showing him Bob's old AV Club documents and photographs. That's when Will discovers a series of maps with an X marked on them. When he pieces them together, a message appears. "Congratulations, you found the first clue." This is Bob's puzzle, and Will becomes obsessed with solving it. That night, Will gathers his friends at Mike's house to share the discovery, but they're not interested. Mike and Lucas think it's ridiculous to go out into Mirkwood during a snowstorm for some old treasure hunt. Dustin's the only one who understands, but even he agrees it's not urgent. They suggest a sleepover instead. Will pretends to agree, but he lies to his mom about staying at Mike's and heads into the woods alone, determined to find what Bob left behind. When the boys realize Will is gone, they reluctantly follow him into the blizzard. They find his bike at the edge of the woods and track his footprints, which are already disappearing under fresh snow. Dustin gets excited about the mystery and loses his footing, sliding down a slope into the creek. His shoes and legs are soaked, which is dangerous in freezing weather. Lucas wants to split up so someone can take Dustin back, but they find Will already digging at the bridge, the location marked with an X on Bob's map. Mike confronts Will and accidentally knocks him down. Will gets up, crying but still digging. That's when his friends realize how broken he really is. Dustin convinces him they need to leave before someone gets frostbite, but then he spots another X carved into a nearby tree. They all start digging frantically and pull out a small lockbox. Inside is a letter from Bob promising to reveal the secrets of the tomb of YBWEN. But a massive gust of wind knocks them down, and Will loses the map from the envelope. Meanwhile, Mr. Clark hears Lucas's panicked voice over the supercom, saying they're trapped under the bridge. He grabs supplies and heads out into the storm, but by the time he arrives, the boys are already gone. He finds the lost map and follows it. The boys find an abandoned cabin at the entrance to Old Mines. Will's map tells them to go down, and despite Mike's protests, he heads in alone. Mike follows but falls through rotting wood. Inside, they encounter two terrifying skeletons hanging on the walls, which turn out to be Halloween decorations, part of Bob's elaborate puzzle. Mr. Clark joins them in the mines using the map he found, but he falls and breaks his ankle. Despite the pain, he insists they keep going. Eventually, they find another lockbox with YBWEN written on it, which Mike realizes is newbie spelled backward. Will smashes it open expecting treasure, but all he finds is a letter from Bob offering friendship to whoever solved the mystery. Bob wrote down his contact info, hoping someone would find this puzzle someday and become his friend. Will is devastated. Bob made this puzzle years before Will was born. How could it have been meant for him? He storms out of the mine angry and heartbroken. But things get worse when Mr. Clark passes out from his injury. The boys know they need to get him to a hospital, and Will steps up. They create a makeshift stretcher and carry Mr. Clark through the blizzard to the bridge where Jen is waiting after hearing their plan over the supercom. Before Mr. Clark leaves in the ambulance, he hands Will the pewter coin from the lockbox and the second part of Bob's letter. Will reads it on the way home and discovers Bob's final message. Even if someone found this puzzle 100 years after his death, Bob would be grateful because it meant he wasn't alone. Those words hit Will hard, and for the first time since Bob's death, he feels whole again. When he gets home covered in snow, his mom hugs him as he cries, but this time, it's healing tears. Stranger Things, Kamchatka. Our story starts with Dr. Orlov, a scientist who's made waves with his research on parallel universes and a prototype device that can amplify telekinetic abilities. His colleague, Dr. Natenko, drags him to a mysterious facility, telling him he's about to become a hero for the USSR. When they get there, Orlov comes face to face with a captive Demogorgon. Natenko reveals the plan. Orlov's going to use his expertise to keep the creature alive so the Soviets can weaponize it against America. That same night, Orlov's daughter Anna wakes up and hears a loud crash. She finds her dad frantically destroying his research. He hands her his prototype and tells her to hide with her younger brother Leonid while he deals with the KGB agents who've just shown up. Natenko storms in with officers, but Orlov claims he's already destroyed the device. They drag him away, forcing Anna and Leonid to listen from their hiding spot under the bed as Natenko announces Orlov will be forced to rebuild everything. The next day, Anna's clutching the prototype while she and Leonid sit in the park trying to figure out how to save their father. Mrs. Sidova, their neighbor, warns them that the state is always watching, specifically pointing out Mr. Frost spying from his window. After she leaves, the siblings decide to break into their dad's lab for clues. Meanwhile, Orlov's locked in a cell at the secret facility. Dr. Karine, the woman in charge, shows him what happens to scientists who don't cooperate. She releases a Demogorgon into a cell, and it kills another prisoner right in front of him. Back in Moscow, Anna and Leonid break into the lab but get caught by Natenko and his soldiers. Natenko demands the prototype, but before he can make a move, Mr. Frost, the neighbor they thought was just a nosy spy, snaps a soldier's neck and takes out the rest. He knocks out Natenko and tells the kids he'll help them find their dad. Frost discovers Kamchatka's location scrawled in a file, and they're off. In Issue 2, we learn more about the dangers they're facing. Natenko's been replaced by Ivan, a ruthless agent who immediately recognizes Frost from security footage. These two have history. Meanwhile, at Kamchatka, Orlov's paired with Dr. Lem, a fellow scientist who idolizes him and has already replicated his prototype. Dr. Karine tests Lem's device on the Demogorgon, trying to connect it to the hive mind through the gate in Hawkins. When it fails, she locks both scientists in the cell with the creature until they figure it out. Frost and the kids reach a train station, but Ivan's already on their trail. The two men have a tense standoff. It turns out Ivan was Frost's apprentice before he betrayed him and destroyed his life. Frost throws a dagger, and while it misses Ivan, it hits one of his officers, giving them just enough time to board the train. On the ride, Anna learns that Ivan took Frost's daughter away from him, branding him a traitor. Issue 3 dives deeper into Frost's past. He admits to Anna that he abandoned his family because of Ivan's betrayal, and he's lived with that regret ever since. The group hijacks a car and keeps moving. Back at Kamchatka, Karine's trying to break Orlov by threatening Dr. Lim. When Orlov refuses to cooperate, she has the Demogorgon kill Lim. Frost makes a stop to drop off cash at a house, but Ivan's already there, and he's brought Frost's daughter, Maria. She calls Frost a traitor, breaking his heart. Ivan forces Frost to hand over Anna's case with the prototype, then leaves him alive to suffer. Meanwhile, Karine explains how she smuggled the Demogorgon out of Hawkins, nursed it back to health in Russia, and now plans to connect it to the hive mind. She's informed that Ivan just delivered Orlov prototype. In the final issue, Anna tries to hotwire the car while Maria tells them to leave Frost behind. But Anna tells Maria the truth about what really happened, and after a heartfelt conversation, Frost and Maria reconcile. The group decides to rescue Orlov together. At Kamchatka, Karine places Orlov's device on the Demogorgon, bringing it back to life. It nearly attacks her, but she escapes just in time. Frost and the kids infiltrate the facility. Frost creates a blackout, giving the children a chance to find Orlov. Using everything Frost taught them, Anna and Leonid incapacitate Dr. Karine and free their father. Meanwhile, Frost's locked in a brutal fight with Ivan. To give everyone time to escape, Frost detonates a grenade, sacrificing himself and destroying the facility. Days later, we see Orlov, Anna, Leonid safe on a train heading to Helsinki. They're starting a new life with the money Frost left them. Anna says it perfectly. "We'd never give up on you, Dad. That's what families do." Stranger Things, the Voyage. We're in the Bering Sea, 1,400 miles out from the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, aboard a freighter called the Persephone. The ship's captain is Jacoby, a worn-down man who's struggling to keep his crew afloat financially. That's why he accepts shady jobs like ferrying people across continents without asking questions. This time, he's transporting Russians, and since it's the 1980s, tensions between the American crew and their Russian passengers are running high. One of Jacoby's crewmates, Hudson, picks a fight with a Russian and refuses to back down even when the captain steps in. That's when Dr. Karine, the commanding officer of the Russians, intervenes and invites Jacoby for a drink. Over whiskey, Karine tells Jacoby she admires that he doesn't ask too many questions. Jacoby explains his worldview. There are people working to survive, and then there are people with power playing games above them. Karine likes his perspective. She hints that she's not just curious about the world, she knows there's more to it, flashing back to everything she witnessed in Hawkins. Meanwhile, a crewmate named Harker is patrolling the lower decks when he stumbles across a locked door blocked by Russian cargo. He hears strange noises and screaming from the other side, then the horrifying sound of flesh tearing. Up on deck, the crew realizes Harker's been gone too long and rushes to find him. Things escalate quickly when Hicks discovers an open door and a trail of blood leading to Harker's gutted remains. The culprit emerges from the shadows. It's a Demogorgon. Hicks barely escapes and locks the door before the creature can wreak havoc on the entire ship. The Persephone is now caught in a brutal storm, and their navigation and communication systems are down. When Jacoby can't find Hicks or Harker, he arms himself and his crew. Turns out he's a former Marine. Hudson immediately blames the Russians, but Jacoby gives them the benefit of the doubt. He confronts Karine and takes her hostage, ordering her crew to stay in their quarters. If anything happens to his people, she'll pay the price. Karine starts poking at Jacoby's past, and he eventually reveals he was a military gun runner. His entire squad was killed in an ambush during an illegal operation, and when he asked questions, the government swept it under the rug and dishonorably discharged him. Before they can talk more, the ship rocks violently. Jacoby learns the Russians have left their quarters and are headed for the boiler room, with Hudson chasing them. When Jacoby arrives, Hudson has already shot one of the Russians in a panic. The situation spirals. But then Hicks appears from behind the boiler, dazed and repeating, "There's a monster on the ship." Jacoby's done playing games. He locks Karine and her men in a room and announces they're hunting down the creature. Karine begs him to just lock the lower decks and let her handle it. She can control the monster. But Jacoby refuses. He's killing that thing no matter what. Hicks is changed by her encounter with the Demogorgon. She's obsessed with killing it and using its corpse as proof of what the Russians are doing. As they hunt the creature, Bram, the crew member manning the navigation system, is ambushed and killed instantly by the Demogorgon. Hudson tries to convince Davis to abandon Jacoby's orders and barricade themselves, but a massive wave rocks the ship and locks Davis behind a door. When the creature appears behind Davis, Hudson doesn't help. He just backs away and leaves his friend to die. Jacoby and Hicks find Hudson on the ground, and Davis being torn apart by the Demogorgon on the other side of a locked door. Unlike Hudson, they manage to open it, but it's too late. Davis is ripped in half. Hicks unloads her shotgun into the creature, but it barely phases it. They're forced to retreat, and Hudson locks the door behind them. They now realize the Demogorgon is basically unkillable. Meanwhile, Karine retrieves a device from her quarters, a gadget that lets her control the creature. She activates it, and moments later, the Demogorgon breaks down the door to free her and her remaining soldiers. Jacoby, Hicks, and Hudson find Bram's body and realize they're the only ones left alive. Jacoby changes strategy. They're abandoning ship. But Karine's voice crackles over the radio, ordering them to meet her on deck. The storm rages as the Russians and the Demogorgon wait for them. Karine gives Jacoby an ultimatum: take them to Kamchatka or die. When Jacoby threatens to shoot her, Hicks pulls the trigger instead and kills one of Kareen's soldiers. The Demogorgon attacks, and Hudson steps up to sacrifice himself. He knows he froze when Davis needed him, and this is his shot at redemption. He grabs a flare gun and shoots it directly into the creature's mouth, giving Jacoby and Hicks time to escape. But the Demogorgon slashes Hudson in half. Jacoby decides they need to abandon ship, but first they have to outsmart the Russians. They lead Kareen's right-hand man and the Demogorgon deeper into the ship using noises and distractions. When Jacoby gets the opportunity, he knocks the Russian out with a metal rod, then runs, with the Demogorgon chasing him. They barely escape and lock the creature behind a reinforced door. On deck, they prepare the lifeboat, but Kareen's soldier ambushes them and seemingly knocks Hicks overboard. Jacoby fights him off and throws him into the sea instead. Hicks manages to grab onto a bar and hangs on for dear life. That's when Kareen shows up with a gun. Jacoby shoots down the lifeboat, then lets go of Hicks so she can escape. He's not letting another crew get wiped out under his watch. Jacoby kicks Kareen, knocking her down, and runs back into the ship. Her control device falls off, and the Demogorgon, now uncontrolled, kills her remaining soldiers. Kareen follows Jacoby inside, but by the time she notices the gasoline spilled everywhere, it's too late. Jacoby lights a flare and drops it, and the entire ship explodes. Hours later, Kareen is floating on wreckage when a Russian military vessel rescues her. Sadly, her story continues.
Stranger Things and Dungeons & Dragons: The Rise of Hellfire.
Eddie Munson walks through Hawkins High like he owns the place, even though most students treat him like an outcast. He's repeating his senior year, but this time he's determined to graduate. When he meets up with his bandmates, they're skeptical of his positive attitude. Eddie promises them an unforgettable finale to their D&D campaign, but there's one problem. He hasn't actually planned anything yet. The story flashes back to Eddie's first day at school years ago. His friend Ronnie hoped they'd find other weirdos who shared their interests. At lunch, Ronnie dragged the quiet Eddie to a table where 3 students were discussing Lord of the Rings. They headed off immediately and got invited to join an unofficial Hellfire Club to play Dungeons & Dragons after school. Meanwhile, in 1985, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas are starting their new year without Will and Eleven. They each brought something for good luck. Lucas has his D20 die, Dustin brought his mini, and Mike has his Dungeon Master's Handbook. They're nervous about the fresh start, but these confessions help them feel a bit better. Back in the past, Eddie and Ronnie ride their bikes to their first D&D session. Eddie's worried about the math, but the others assure him he'll love it. They create their characters. Ronnie picks a halfling, while Eddie becomes a half-orc warrior based on what the party needs. Eddie rolls great stats, but Ronnie gets stuck with terrible rolls and a bunch of nat ones. Their first adventure has them fighting a goblin horde. When Ronnie's character gets cornered, Eddie steps in to take the hit. After hours of battle, they defeat the goblins, but bigger questions remain. Where did they come from? And who commands them? That's how Eddie fell in love with the game. In the present, Eddie spots Mike's D&D handbook at lunch and watches as a teacher harasses the boys over the Satan game panic from the 80s. Eddie swoops in to defend them, arguing that D&D is just math, probability, and dice. Surely the teacher wouldn't discourage students from learning math, right? The teacher backs off, and Eddie sits down with a simple question. So, tell me about your campaign. Mike's dreading telling his friends what he's decided about Eddie's invitation to join Hellfire. Thankfully, Dustin and Lucas feel the same way. Will was the one who got them into D&D, and after the perfect ending to their last campaign, playing without Will and Eleven feels wrong. They agree to turn Eddie down. In the past, we see Eddie getting bullied by a kid named Doug for liking D&D. But as days passed, Doug becomes genuinely interested in their campaign and asks if he can join. Eddie introduces him to their dungeon master, Kenny, and Doug proudly announces himself as Dendrick of the Darkwood, an elf warrior. Everyone laughs, and Kenny applauds his courage. That's how they found another party member. The day Doug joined, their party ventured into an abandoned cave and found the Mace of Disruption guarded by a vicious manticore, a creature with a lion's body, bat wings, and a human face. They fought hard, but the manticore was too powerful. Eddie's party convinced him to retreat so they could live to fight another day. In 1985, the boys approach Eddie at lunch to deliver the bad news. Mike bluntly tells him they can't join his campaign. Eddie convinces them to explain why. And they tell him their last campaign was perfect, and joining a new one without Will and 11 feels like betrayal. Eddie tries to ask about Will going missing, but backs off when he realizes it's a touchy subject. He understands. He's felt that way before. In the past, Eddie kept bringing new players to help tackle the manticore. First came Stan the dwarf, who protected the party with his shield as they fled yet again. Then Jeff joined, someone who'd played D&D before and was willing to risk his character on day one. Eddie convinces the party to try one more time, arguing that future victories won't mean anything if they know they were beaten by this creature. This time, Eddie's prepared. He's been counting the manticore's tail strikes and tracking its health. When the creature runs out of spikes after hitting Eddie's character, the entire party unleashes everything they have and finally wins. Eddie also gains a new friend in Jeff, who plays guitar and wants to jam with his band. Eddie gives the boys a powerful pitch. By not playing D&D anymore, are they really honoring their last campaign and their friends? Wouldn't playing actually be the true honor? If every campaign were the same, why would anyone play in the first place? This adventure will be different, and that's what makes it special. The boys are convinced. If Eddie's half as good a dungeon master as he is a salesman, they're in for something great. They agree to join for one session to see if they want to continue. The next day, Lucas, Dustin, and Mike are having lunch with Eddie when a high school senior stops them. She warns them about Eddie's supposed reputation, that he's a suspected drug user, dealer, and criminal who maybe even shot someone on the West Coast. Despite the holes in her story, doubt creeps into their minds. In the past, Eddie's party was fighting raiders who attacked their village. After the session, Eddie suggested the raiders must be after something important, but Vince used this to attack Eddie personally, bringing up the rumors about the Munson family and questioning why Kenny allowed someone like Eddie in the campaign. Eddie stormed out. Even though Ronnie tried to comfort him, Eddie was hurt because Vince was one of them, not some random bully. The boys debate if they should still join Eddie's campaign now that they've heard the rumors. Lucas especially worries that hanging out with Eddie might hurt his chances of making the basketball team. Back in Eddie's memory, only he stepped in to save Vince, sacrificing his 2-year-old character in the process. Vince showed no gratitude, and when Ronnie lashed out at him, Kenny slammed his fists on the table and gave Vince one last chance. When Vince didn't change, Kenny kicked him out. Eddie's character wouldn't be revived, but he got to create a new one and continue the adventure. That day after school, Dustin and Mike show up for Eddie's campaign as promised. Lucas arrives minutes later, despite his concerns. With 3 new players at his table, Eddie can finally begin his adventure once again.
The boys' first session with Eddie is intense. There's fear, then victory when Mike lands the final blow. They've saved a village and defeated goblins. But when they get too excited, Eddie teases the thorns ahead, building anticipation for his finale, which still doesn't exist. Eddie panics because he still hasn't planned the ending. He's reminded of his own campaign's finale from years ago. Ronnie and Eddie couldn't believe they'd played for almost 3 years and that Kenny would be leaving as their dungeon master. The party defeated an orc army amid a ruined castle using their Wheels of Steel strategy. But this was just a sacrifice to boost the demigod Eus's powers. Eus was revealed as their true enemy. In the present, Eddie sees Lucas, Dustin, and Mike hanging out with his other friends. He's reminded why he loves D&D so much. Walking home, he remembers the rest of the battle,
how EUs destroyed his friends and killed Ronnie's character with a single spell. Only Eddie's character remained standing. Everyone expected Eddie to die like a hero. After a rousing speech, Eddie dropped his sword and pulled out the Mace of Disruption instead. He knew his character would die, but so would EUs if he landed the hit. Eddie needed a 95 or higher to succeed. When he rolled 100, everyone erupted in celebration. They defeated their most formidable foe, even in death. Eddie still struggles to find a fitting finale for his campaign. Then he remembers Kenny pulling him aside after that game and handing him all his D&D books. He was confused. He died twice in the campaign. Why did he deserve to be the dungeon master? Kenny laughed and explained that Eddie knows how to tell a good story and isn't afraid to sacrifice his characters for it. Plus, Kenny knew Eddie planned to use the Mace of Disruption, which is why he made his second character a paladin. Through this memory, Eddie remembers that D&D is all about having fun. The next day, Eddie finally comes up with the villain for his campaign's final arc, Vecna. And with that, another new adventure begins for our heroes. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Stranger Things comics, hit that like button and subscribe to Geek Force for more comic breakdowns. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. What comic should we cover next? Until then, we'll see you in the next one.